Good evening. I would like to call the April 11th meeting of the Kalamazoo Citizens Public Safety Review and Appeal Board meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Christopher Caldwell.
Present.
Wally Ferreira.
Present.
Luis Garcia.
Here.
Ebony Hemphill.
Present.
Barbara Miller.
Here.
Vernon Payne.
Here.
Susan Stapleton.
Here.
Larry Tolbert.
Present.
Curtis Gardner is excused. Thank you for being here tonight in person as well as via the city's live streaming platforms. Excuse me. Public comments will be accepted during the times as indicated on today's meeting agenda. Community members that wish to provide public comments over the phone can call 888-382-9556 during the citizen comments period. They will enter a queue and will be prompted to offer their comments in turn. Callers will be commenting to the board live and will no longer be able to leave a recorded message.
Thank you, Director Dusick. You received the January 10th minutes in your packet. I will entertain a motion to adopt those minutes. If there are changes, edits, please signify. Hearing none, is there a motion to adopt?
I move we adopt the minutes as is.
Second?
Support.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Minutes pass and are adopted. PCR report, please.
Good evening, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the board, Director Dusick. It's a beautiful day outside. Before you, you have the PCR report that we have accumulated since January. We're 5 complaints in January. We were just chatting over, Inspector and I were just chatting, comparing for last year. It was a slight difference. It was 21 at this time, and now we're only at, we're at 5 so far. If you have any specific questions about ones that are send it to you. Vice Chair?
Yes. Just for clarification, when the complaints get withdrawn from the complainant, do those initial complaints, I guess, do they get investigated even though they have been withdrawn or not?
All right, I'm an inspector. We chatted about that, so.
Yeah. Yes, to a degree. They don't go through the whole PCR process, but they're still documented in kind of the same format as a regular PCR report. And then they would be closed out as what we call an inquiry.
And based on your findings, if you do find something in there, whether if it's a breach of policy or anything like that, you'd still also take action based on that?
That's correct. So if the citizen chose to withdraw and I conducted a preliminary investigation, and during that I found something that would be considered what we call misconduct other, or misconduct not based on the complaint, then that would continue.
Thank you.
Was there an unusual number of withdrawals this past reporting period?
We had 3.
You mean for previous 2000, for this year so far?
Yes.
I'd say comparatively, the fact that we've only had 5 PCRs, I'd say that that proportion is unusual, yes.
Yeah. Is there any way to account for that, or? It's just
No, they were 2 very different reasons that the individuals gave. I think they just kind of happened to fall both in the same month.
I'm sorry, go ahead, stop, please.
What do you think the reason is why there's so few this year as opposed to last year? Or do you think spring and summer's coming?
I think that has a lot to do with it as well. But last year also, and you'll see it in the upcoming annual report, But last year was an outlier in that we had 51 PCRs last year compared to the year before we were at 31, which is, and even after a review, I can't really account for why. So, and then this year's kind of drop, I can't really see a pattern to that either.
If you could just take a moment to characterize the advantages of collecting that data and how it impacts police operations, perhaps police policies and procedures. The question really is the efficacy of collecting that data and how it's utilized.
Yeah, you want to lead off?
I can tell you that certainly when we do our end of year reporting, when we take together the complaints that have been filed, and I'm assuming you're talking about the content of the complaints themselves, the data that we extract from that or was able to get from that.
Not only the content, but personnel, any issues that stand out, that type of data, any data that you can use, that you're utilizing that makes the information worthwhile.
Certainly. Any pattern that we can recognize is advantageous to us, whether it be down to an individual officer's actions or behavior that kind of reappear, maybe a one-off or a couple times a year that's not caught in a complaint that we're not going to, we do a lot of, our oversight's very good as far as I'm concerned in the department, but when someone brings forward a complaint, it allows an even closer look at something than we would ever get normally. So I think that having a number of complaints brought forward allows us to recognize patterns, and again, whether it be an officer's behavior or perhaps a training issue on our part or a policy issue or something like that. When it comes to my end of year analysis, I can look and see those trends and bring them forward to the chiefs and the training division and the folks who are kind of able to make a change to the current officers we have and then the new ones that we're bringing in multiple times a year.
And Inspector brought up a great point. One of the things that we pay very close attention to, at least in the last year or so, is that anything dealing with any training aspects, we immediately contact our training division and say, well, we need to emphasize additional training, whatever the training may be, if it's how we're handcuffing or if it's training dealing with verbal commands or anything to that effect. But we're very conscious of communicating not only with our training division, but we also would take a look at to make sure if we see something reoccurring, let's double check our policy and make sure that's in place too.
I think part of our responsibility as a board is to recommend policy and procedure changes to the city manager's office. And it would be really, really advantageous to the community to know that that data is being analyzed, it's being used to make policy and procedure changes. It's our department acknowledging the fact that, hey, maybe we got this one wrong and we can improve on that. That's the transparency aspect that builds trust. And so what I suggest is that going forward, if possible, we partner together so that we can carry that information forward to the community.
In the report that I produce, just as in past reports, will be available on the city's website on the transparency page for download.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions?
I think the important part of this past discussion is not only that the information is used reactively, but as you talked about in terms of changing potentially training practice or policies, that it's being used proactively. And I think that's what's important for the citizens to know, that information is being utilized and not only just in a reactive way, but to do something for the betterment of everyone.
Correct.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Next, we have an opportunity for general comments. And I would like to remind the public that speakers will each have 3 minutes for their comments. We will start with in-person speakers, and then go to call-in speakers. People who want to offer comments via phone should call 888-382-9556, starting now, through the end of the public comment period. While the Citizens Public Safety Review and Appeal Board welcomes your comments, this is not a time for dialogue or give and take between speakers and board members or city staff. So that your concerns can be addressed, we ask you to sign in and provide your contact information. Also, please be mindful of the time limit and finish your sentence when time expires. Now, we're going to provide you time to call in and digest all of that. And if you have questions, please ask them. But at this time, we would like to entertain any board member comments. Any board member comments?
Would you please repeat that number one more time?
The number to call in is 888-382-9556.
I just have a quick comment, Chair Payne, but I just want to thank Chief Boyson and Chief Green for hosting and the hospitality for the training that you guys gave us last month, and Inspector Mason for your presentation as well. It was a really informative time, and just appreciate the transparency that you guys gave us. And I would encourage any citizens that are interested in kind of getting an idea of what we experienced to sign up for the Regional Citizens Academy. I myself have done it. I know most of our board members have done it, and it's been a really incredible experience. And you can find that on the Kalamazoo Public Safety's website. But thank you guys for your work.
Thank you. I would like to invite Assistant Chief Green and Inspector Mason back to the podium, please. During our training session, you introduced the M90 program. There was also a wonderful article in the newspaper about that effort, which is, I believe, unique to the state of Michigan. And there are not many of those efforts being made nationally as well. My question is, how does that, or is that intended to reach back a decade and look at and compare data with the 2013 traffic stop study?
Yeah, so the My90 program, for those who may not be aware of it, is a new program in which it falls under the principles of procedural justice. Remember, I think it's about 8-9 years ago when the federal government did the big police, 21st century policing, that's what I'm trying to remember, dealing with procedural justice of how the interactions with law enforcement and citizens and how that is captured, and making sure that the citizen has a voice, make sure that the officer was respectful, neutrality when it came to the decision. So the My90 is simply a survey, no different than if you were going to a dentist's office or any other store or any other service that we send, that is a third party that sends it out to the person when they make contact. There's 3 ways that it's done. One is the fact that if someone calls in 911, their phone number is captured, and the third party will send out a quick survey, 5 to 7 questions about how was your experience with the Kalamazoo Department of Public Safety. There are certain calls we will not send out surveys to, such as violent calls or something to that effect. The second one is that we're looking at when officers make contact with citizens. So I know that we're planning on doing some collaboration this summer out in the community, that we can also provide this card. I did not bring one with me, I apologize, that someone from the citizen or constituents could say, hey, we'd like to fill out this My90 text message about your contact, let's say National Night Out or any other neighborhood association event, and dealing with the officers. And the third one is dealing with traffic stops. To answer your question, Chairman, that right now is dealing strictly at our present trend that we're looking at. My 90 is just a 90-day pilot program. The department will take a quick, extensive review of it after 90 days to see what will be the next steps. What we like to do at that time is make sure that once we find out the results of how did the surveys go, what's the information, we can then bring it back to the board and also to the community to say, what are we, here's a sample, I think everyone has seen the card, thank you, Director Dusick. What is our next steps here? So that might be something in the future, but right now is just capturing where we are right now with our contact with the citizens. Long question, long answer, but I wanted to make sure I explained to the public who may not be aware of My 90.
Okay, and my question was to be clear that was not, the My 90 is not designed to go back and do a comparative analysis of the traffic stop data in 2013. Am I correct in that assumption?
That is correct.
It's not designed to do that. So there's no connection there from a data perspective.
Yeah.
Correct.
But it will capture the present.
No, capture the present. Okay,
Correct.
thank you. That's good information to have. Inspector Mason, question for you. I want to echo Member Farrar's comments about how excellent that training was that you guys provided for us, your department provided for us. And I'd like to ask you to explain the difference between the use of force continuum and resisting and obstructing. There's a lot of chatter in the community about resisting and obstructing being tacked onto charges to produce a felony. And so I would like for you to explain how that whole process works, if you could, in as much detail as you think necessary.
Sure. The Force Continuum is it's a publicly available document that is used as a training guide. It's produced by the state of Michigan, and it's used to train officers across the state. And what the continuum is it kind of shows a citizen's actions from what we call inactive resistance all the way up to essentially a deadly force assault, and then an officer's response to it. So that is wholly separate from the resisting and obstructing statute. And just to kind of parse those out further, just because somebody demonstrates a certain behavior that is listed on the force continuum, say the clenching of fists or whatever. What that is designed to do is when an officer recognizes where somebody is at on this continuum, they have trained for an appropriate response, which in that example would be officer presence and verbal direction. It doesn't necessarily mean that once somebody does that, just because it uses the word inactive resistance, that it triggers an arrest or something under the R&O statute. So those would be essentially wholly separate. The R&O statute has language on essentially, it has specific language on citizen actions concerning officer investigations or law enforcement investigations, law enforcement actions, and kind of citizens, what's the word I'm searching for here? What's that? Yes, thank you. Citizens' behavior in light of kind of what the officers are doing at the time. So again, the force continuum, again, which you can see online and take a look at if you'd like, is to be used only as a training guide, and the terms of the resistance in there don't necessarily translate immediately to resistance under the R&O statute.
Yeah. We have had a couple of cases at least where non-lethal use of force was necessary to apprehend a suspect. Mm-hmm. And so it's very important that not only we understand that, but the community get that information and understand how that whole process works. Yes. And so we all go to different community organization meetings. We all attend different events. I pass out hundreds of cards, and I would say that a lot of the calls I get and interactions I have are around this issue. So anything that you can do to support the board in our efforts to educate the community around this issue would be very helpful.
I can certainly tell you that if we could live our whole careers as officers in the lowest possible end of that spectrum, we would. Because when you look at the data of how, things like injury, like we can record physical injury, right, to officers and to citizens when resistance increases and the officer response has to increase. We can't measure the things that aren't visible, kind of the other forms of trauma to both parties that happen like that. And it's a difficult world that law enforcement officers occupy when they go out and they are in incidents and situations that are very emotionally intense for everyone involved. But I just kind of want to reiterate that, we as officers, if we can spend our whole careers as low as possible on that spectrum of simply doing our jobs through verbal direction, and being there without having to physically intervene, we would love to do that.
Chairman, may I add something else?
Yes, sir.
And I think you brought up an excellent point in the sense, this past month and 2 months now, we've been having a serious amount of community meetings. And one of the things we like to offer to the board that when you have a community meeting and you need for us to come to explain in detail about anything dealing with the department, we'll be happy. One of us, or we'll bring someone, if we're not available, to that training to make sure we want to educate as much. I know that's one of the Chief Boyson's main directives, is to make sure that we're educating, we're transparent, and that also we can inform you of the different ways in which police are handling. And thank you again. When we talk about the Citizens Regional Academy, we're also going to have one in September, and I don't know the date, but we encourage to ask us to come to support you in any way we can.
I'd like to underscore that comment you made about your accessibility and outreach and information. In the last 2 months, I've attended 6 or 8 meetings. You guys have been at all of them. So
I think you shortened yourself with 6 and 8. I think there's been a lot more.
it feels like it. At any rate, thank you so much for your work and your cooperation with the board, because we definitely need to partner around these issues. Thank you.
Okay.
Citizen, any further board comments? Citizen comments?
Thank you, Chair Payne. I'll check now. There are no call-in comments.
There are no calling comments, and we do not have anyone in chambers. So that ends the opportunity for citizens to have some questions and comments during this session. Our upcoming meetings will be held on July 11th and August 8th. And I, without objection, will entertain a motion to adjourn. And, well, so hold on, flip it. Excuse me? Oh, turn my sheet over. I got a cue sheet here. Oh, here we go. Thank you, Director Dusick. We will entertain some comments from Director Dusick.
Thank you, Chair Payne. I'm pleased to announce that the dates and times of the board's outreach events will be posted on CSCRAB's website at www.kalamazoocscrab.org, and that is CPSRAB, as soon as confirmed by members scheduled to attend. Citizens are encouraged to take advantage of this meet, greet, and conversate opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Dusick. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Larry Talbot will make that motion.
Second.
Support.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. We are adjourned to closed session, to work session. Okay.